Come, let us explore whether meditation can make you a better person. This morning's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found on Reddit. A question that begins, does meditation really make you a better person? A question that continues, I know people who have meditated for years and are still just as judgmental, narcissistic, quick to anger, selfish, and vindictive as they ever were. Now, that's not to say there were ever much of any of those things in the first place. I wouldn't keep in my company anyone who has those traits to a significant or even moderate degree. But they still have these qualities in some amount, like most people, and I cannot say I have noticed them diminished within time. If I were to graph out the improvement in their character and emotional stability over the last few years of meditating, I'd have to draw a flat line. They haven't changed at all. I love them dearly, but I see no evidence that meditation has benefited them in terms of making them more of all the good things they already were or less of the bad, despite hearing that consistent practice makes you more calm, patient, and loving. This is a brilliant question. I salute the intellectual integrity and earnestness and intelligence of the person who wrote this question. Bravo, my friend. Well done. The world would be a different place if people held everyone to account, including spiritual teachers. I can't tell you how many people clearly suffering from neurofecal dysplasia who insist, oh, well, you can't expect to see a change this year, this decade, or this lifetime. You need to wait the length of time equal to the birth and death of the universe. And yet, in the penultimate passage of the Satipatthana Sutta, we read that one can master the Buddha's path in less than 7 years, or 7 quarters, or 7 months, or 7 fortnights, or 7 weeks, or even 7 days. If someone cannot help you to master the path in at least 16 weeks, find someone who can. Now, this is all great, but we're talking about ancient texts whose authorship cannot be guaranteed, and there is no way of proving this. So what we can prove is neuroscience. Let's do that right now. One of the things neuroscience is going to show us is that there's 2 distinct modes we can be in, neurologically speaking. We can be in what the Chinese refer to as a yang mode, where we are rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel, and proud of it. Or we can be in yin mode, where we are flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. Now, this is not a commentary upon the impulses we are experiencing. This is a commentary on whether or not we give our impulses license to determine our choices and our utterances and our deeds. The question is not, do we always feel rigid, but are we able to choose flexibility? The question is not, do we feel fear, but are we able to choose love? And as that get easier and easier and easier. To answer that question, I would like to explore neuroscience with you. And so I shall begin with an amateurish image depicting the side view of a human brain. If we read books or receive instructions to actively focus or actively analyze, or both, regardless of whether they use Sanskrit or Pali or English terminology, The only way to do that neurologically is to rely upon discrete mechanisms such as those found in either the medial prefrontal cortex or the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Overwork your prefrontal cortex and it becomes inevitable. They will find that your amygdala gets stimulated. This thing here that kind of looks like a P, this thing right here is the seat of our anxiety and aggression. Now, the sad news is the more peril we've experienced, the more trauma we've experienced, the larger it is. One of the tenets of neuroplasticity is the same thing we learn in the gym. Use it or lose it. The more we work with a neural pathway, the stronger and more resilient and robust it becomes. The less we work with a neural pathway, the more it diminishes in the above attributes. So, we've learned that active focusing and active concentration will activate our amygdala. But there's more to our central nervous system than just these two bits. Allow me to introduce you. Allow me to broach the subject of mindfulness. Good morning, welcome aboard. The most efficient way to practice mindfulness is to silently, mentally, and passively recite the demonstrative pronoun this during each inhalation. Why do that? Because doing so induces our cerebral cortex to actively cooperate with our parasympathetic nervous system. Ensconced within the middle third of our spinal cord, the sympathetic nervous system has evolved to help us perceive in a very special way, to help us perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. Can you see how vulnerable this is? How yin this is? So yin and yang are not psychological abstractions. Yin and yang are social and psychological symptoms of physiological mechanisms, which is good because it's easier to access our physiology than pluck ideas out of the sky. So what have we evolved to perceive? Well, we've evolved to perceive clearly sight, sound, sensations, flavor, sense, and the like, including emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. What are we to do with all that stuff we notice? That question brings us to meditation. The most efficient way to practice meditation is to silently, mentally, and passively recite the one-syllable verb ease during each exhalation. Doing so induces our cerebral cortex to cooperate with our parasympathetic nervous system. This ensconced within both the lower third and the upper third of our spinal cord. This parasympathetic nervous system has evolved to support both physical relaxation as well as mental release. So what? So this, number one, working with these two attributes, or these two facets of our autonomic nervous system, calms our aggressive and anxious amygdala. Two, it stimulates this thing here that kind of looks like the letter C. This thing that the big kids call an anterior cingulate gyrus. This thing that functions as the hub of our mirror neurons and the seat of empathy and compassion and love. But wait, there's more. So this is exactly why the great Tuku Tundup insisted that the highest love is spontaneous and uncontrived and can never be the product of active focus or active analysis, despite by the ravings of those who are rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist, crypto-competitive, and cruel. So the third benefit of regularly training in this mindfulness and meditation that is dependent upon that is in cooperation with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, is that our choices and utterances and deeds begin flowing with the effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity. Not scattered spontaneity, but centered spontaneity. So, now I've got some bad news. Cue dramatic music. Dun, dun, dun. Oops, wrong button. Come on, machine, don't fail me now. Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sex, including humans, including meditation teachers, including meditators, what could that psychiness look like? It could look like relying upon our prefrontal cortex in a way that makes us slaves to our tendencies to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. But there's going to be 10% who are enthusiastic to cooperate with their autonomic nervous system in a way that gives license and empowerment to their tendencies to be flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. I would like to tie this up in a big red bow. I've been told, I'm not an expert on this, but I've been told that in Native American spirituality, there's the tale of the two wolves. And it is said that within each of us, there are two wolves, one good and one bad. And the question is not who whispers in your ear, but to whom you heed. Similarly, the more we meditate in cooperation with our autonomic nervous system, the more we're going to be defined not by fear, but by love. And many spiritual disciplines recognize that the two are antithetical. And in fact, even a Christian scripture reads that God is love. And the kingdom of God is simply our state when we are ruled not by fear, although it is vociferous, but instead by love. I think it could be splendid if together as a team we did a little bit of chanting and a little bit of meditation. Let's do this together as a team after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. Excuse me. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I've spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that you will not have to. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. So, come let us play with the latest iteration of All Good One's Easy Meditation. Now, we talked about the perils of active analysis. So instead, we're going to play with just a little bit of passive contemplation, designed really kind of like a warm-up. You know, before you run a sprint, you warm up because you don't want to pull anything. In junior high school, I had a pal named John Yulson. He failed to warm up appropriately, and he needed, what do you call the type of surgery that's rules with muscles and tendons? I forgot what that's called. If you remember what that's called, let me know in the chat window. But he needed that type of surgery. So this is the psychic version of an athletic warm-up. Please channel it. So we're going to begin. We're going to open this morning's practice with Mahayoga's wise first fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path that leaps over clinging pride's obstructions to omniscience. Together, let's chant. Rather than indulge or controlling tendencies with all follies of active visualization, emotion, magic, and belief, we could just recite these wise words in harmony with our breathing and allow our subconscious to do the heavy lifting. Let us sidestep the rigidity that confuses metaphors for statements literal, and relax into the flexibility that savors the chance explaining metaphors as similes. Together. May we see how all circumstances or lots could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this body or form. So, number one, the phrase may is not an appeal to a real or imagined celestial entity, which would make of us mewling infants. Au contraire, we're simply using verbiage to guide our intention. For words guide intention, intention guides mind, mind guides energy. Number two, we're going to use the verb. So the Buddha taught of 4 bases of mindfulness: the circumstantial, the physical, the interpersonal, and the mental. We're going to use the verb melt as a metaphor of impermanence. We're also going to use the verb absorb as a metaphor of interdependence. You know, the way a pat of butter might melt into a warm pancake, or a hot baked potato. Yum, yum. So, what we're also doing is, in the spirit of fighting fire with fire, we're going to fight you're going to use self-centeredness to transcend self-centeredness. So at this point, I might have overwhelmed you. So let's repeat this one more time. May we see how all circumstances or lots could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this body or form. And here we see form represented by 2 Buddhas doing the hibbity-dibbity. So now we're going to take all these words and compress them or coalesce them into just 6 syllables that we're going to divide between our inhalation and our exhalation. May we feel how all bodies or forms could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this communication or speech. Our experience of the interpersonal is expressed through communication, both verbal and nonverbal. This is referred to as speech and symbolized here as mantra. Oops. May we hear how all interpersonal speech could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if it could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into this mind. Fabulous. Here we go. May we feel our while perceiving, emoting, intending, thinking, recalling, and imagining minds could be as impermanent and interdependent, as if they could blissfully melt into rainbow light that could delightfully absorb into our vast empty void. Like the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although tantalizing to the eye, could be not graspable to the hand. So that's right, folks. Emptiness or voidness is simply a metaphor of non-graspability. Now let us practice the main body of this morning's practice. Anta Yoga's mindfulness and meditation, the seventh and eighth folds of the Buddha's Eightfold Path that slice through the obscuring emotions of dualities, hope, and fear. All right, let's dig in. So we're going to practice this for 3 to 4 collections of 144 rounds. This is how we practice stimming, or the subtle play of Anu Yoga's subtle energy. Here's how we play with it. As we've already explored during the opening lesson, during each inhalation, we're going to silently and mentally recite this. While doing so, we can advance the tip of our right thumb, beginning from the base of our little finger to the top of our index finger. Let's do this together. So now we know how to count 12 rounds, which is one inhalation followed by one exhalation. On our left hand, we can count sets, beginning with our index finger. 1 set of 12 rounds, 2 sets of 12 rounds, 3 sets of 12 rounds, and so forth. This will give us 144. But how do we count sets, or 3 collections of 144? By playing with the knuckles of our hands. So for the first collection of 144, we can find the tip of our left ring finger, and upon it gingerly rest the great knuckle of our left ring finger, as our hands rest in our lap, palms up. Doing so helps our subtle energies to coalesce in the area behind our navel. We now begin collecting our second set of 144 rounds of breath. To keep track of that, we drag the tip of our left ring finger up to our right ring finger's second knuckle. There we go. If you've just joined us, allow me to remind you that, oopsie, there we go. The most efficient way to practice mindfulness is to silently and mentally and passively recite the demonstrative pronoun this during each inhalation. Doing so induces our cerebral cortex to cooperate with our sympathetic nervous system, which is evolved to help us perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly, to perceive sight, sound, sensations, flavor, scents, and the like, including emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. That's a mouthful. The most efficient way to practice meditation is to silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease during each exhalation. This induces our cerebral cortex to cooperate with our parasympathetic nervous system, which has evolved to support both physical relaxation as well as mental release. So it's not our job to repress emotions. If we think this sucks, that's fine. If we feel aversion to what we're doing, we just notice the aversion as we breathe in and relax into it as we breathe out. Our job is not to push it away. Our job is just to notice and release. Just as a surfer does not try to control the ocean but merely ride the wave, we're riding the wave of noticing and releasing. So to to keep track of our third collection of 144 breaths, we can slide the tip. So we were resting the tip of our left ring finger upon the second knuckle of our right ring finger, and we slid it up to the third knuckle. And so for the final portion of this morning's practice, we shall shift gears from our ring finger to our little finger, and we shall rest the great knuckle at the base of our right little finger upon the tip of our left little finger. We're going to seal this morning's practice with Mahayoga's loving second fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path that leaps over competitive jealousies, obstructions to omniscience. Together, rather than indulge or controlling tendencies with all follies of active visualization, emotion, magic, and belief, we could just recite these kind words in harmony with our breathing and allow our subconscious to do the heavy lifting. Let us sidestep the rigidity that confuses metaphors for statements literal, and relax into the flexibility that savors the chance explaining metaphors as similes. May all minds of all beings know... Oopsie, my mistake. One moment, please. Okay. May all circumstances or lots of all beings know have this safe fortune or boon. As a Buddha's real or imagined paradise, fair land or Vati. So we're going to take all these words and compress them down into just 6 syllables that we're going to divide between our inhalation and our exhalation. May all minds of all beings know be as peacefully enlightened as the mind of a real or imagined Buddha symbolized by a tikle, one syllable seed or bija mantra. The mental morality of kind intention is the second fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. May all relationships or speech of all beings know be as joyfully loving as a real or imagined Buddha speech symbolized by mantra. Whoopsie. The interpersonal morality of kind communication is the third fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. May all bodies or forms of all beings know enjoy the beautiful health seen in Buddhist statuary, depicting the blissful body of a real or imagined Yadamanak type of enlightenment such as Kuntu Zangpo. The physical morality of kind conduct is the fourth fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. And the circumstantial morality of kind commerce is the fifth fold. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 10.5 hours, I would very much like to return to the today's evening meditation class and group practice. And if you, oopsie, wrong button. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.